Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing incredibly well. I'm doing great, thank you very much. And I'm so glad you've joined me for part 2 of our story tonight. And oh, what a fabulous story it is. We have got, obviously, a prison inmate. He's come out of prison now. And he had a relationship with a woman in prison called Alexa, who was obviously declaring her undying love to him. And when he gets out of prison, he learns that she really wants nothing to do with him, and she does a disappearing act, making sure that this prisoner can't actually get anywhere close to her, but he finds out all about where she lives and even gets his sister to rent an apartment right next to her so he can keep his beady eyes on Alexa. But it is very clear to me, and I'm sure to every listener, that his intentions towards Alexa are not good. She's going to have to pay for rejecting him. That's very clear. And she's putting herself into some compromising positions with her handstands on the balcony railings, which makes you wonder where the story is going to lead. And let's continue with part 2 of our story. Stupid, stupid woman, Alexa thought to herself, once Jane Goodlington had returned into her apartment. One thing was absolutely certain. Her neighbour was not exactly reticently shy in coming forward to express her opinion to a perfect stranger. She had heard it all before, of course. For goodness sake, why are people so damned morbid all the time? Can't they think of more positive, upbeat things, for goodness sake? Why were they so intent about squeezing the joy out of everything, like the water out of a sponge, so that life becomes dry and arid, like a pitiful desert, lacking any spark of life? You saw it on social media all the time, didn't you? People love to put a damper on life's simple joys. Sugar will kill you. Cigarettes are deadly. Coffee is unhealthy or healthy. They can't still decide on the answer to that one. Alcohol is just dreadful for your health. Everything is so bad for you. Alexa did not want to listen to all this stuff and nonsense, all this drivel. Because if she did, she might as well be living on a desert island, spearing fish and living on coconuts. She enjoyed her cinnamon bun every morning, served with coffee, and those indulgences would always continue no matter what. As for the handstands that Alexa did on the balcony railings every morning, it was no big deal to her. She was agile like a cat, and people in the apartment block needed to accept that. Even her own daughter, Sophia, these days, was now beginning to get rather annoying, like the woman next door. These days she had a big gob on her that couldn't be closed unless you got it wired down permanently by the dentist. If Alexa could get the procedure done, she'd have paid for it herself, just to shut up her daughter. Who knew teenagers could be so annoying, like mosquitoes buzzing around you all the time, sucking the lifeblood out of you? There was no doubt that Sophia had not been remotely shy in saying some rather mean things to Alexa that had not been easy to listen to. It had been so nice when Sophia was all but a little girl. She'd been so sweet back in the day, a charming little thing she was. She wouldn't have said boo to a goose back then. The type of child that won the hearts of all the teachers and everybody believed was the perfect little angel. Boy, had times changed since then. Too bad children had to grow up. If Alexa could have kept her daughter Sophia at age 10 indefinitely, she'd almost certainly have been tempted to do so. Sophia had grown up far too fast. Where had the time gone to? She had now become a capricious, rather belligerent 16-year-old teenager. Forget sparing your feelings, because Sophia never held back on anything, she thought. Yet despite how nauseating her daughter had become, Alexa still loved the bones of her, even though she wasn't very good at showing it. Ma'am, who are you kidding? You look like an old leather hide lying out there in the sun all day. It's embarrassing. When you sometimes come to pick me up at school, everybody asks what you've been doing. Have you been on holiday or something? Because you're so golden. I tell them you lie out on the patio all afternoon long, soaking up the sun like a salamander. People are genuinely shocked by that, Mum. You abuse your skin far too much. Bully for them, snorted Alexa. Like I care what any of your friends think about me. I know I look good. I look fabulous, and that's all that matters. Mum, you're in great shape. Yes, I'll give you that. But if you keep lying out in the sun in the way you do, you'll turn into a rhinoceros, and I'm not joking either. The skin on your face is thickening. It's aging fast, Mum. Haven't you seen the gathering of fine lines around your eyes and mouth area? And what about your hands? You've got age spots on them. There's a real possibility that you could get skin cancer. Why won't you listen to anybody? People are warning you because they're being kind. And I'm sorry, but I want to be around you for a long time. We had a lecturer coming to school the other day. Well, we gathered around together in assembly. They did a slideshow on skin cancer for us. It was scary stuff, Mum, but the school wanted to highlight to us the very big problem that cancer presents. I know if my friends go away, they always get a spray tan. They wear total sunblock on the beach. You'd do well to do the same. Oh, not you two, lecturing me. For goodness sake, why is everybody doing it these days? I'll have you know, in South America, a lot of people roast on the beach, and they put sun oil all over their bodies, and nobody tells them off. But no, you want to do that to me. Make me feel awful about myself, and that's not very nice. I'm tired of this, Sophia. If you're going to start picking fault on me, I've got some things to say about you, young lady, that are far from pretty to hear. But since you're being so dreadfully candid, I will extend you the same courtesy. Sophia snorted. Go on, then, say it. I can take it. I'm a big girl now. Unlike you, I'm not so quickly offended by everybody. For a start, love, you are sickly pale, as white as a sheet if ever I saw one. You look like a goth, but then again you probably are. That's the whole idea, isn't it? I mean, how much black eyeliner do you wear? You look like a raccoon. And then you wear black nail varnish, black lipstick. Everything is black with you. Is there any other colour that actually exists in your wardrobe that isn't black? Then you're always wearing those black dresses and those black ripped jeans. And you often wear dresses with combat boots. Lace-up boots, for goodness sake, with a dress. It's ugly, love. Very, very ugly. What do you know about fashion, Mum? Absolutely nothing, said Sophia dismissively. Our generation does things differently. It's quite hip to wear combat boots with a dress. Everybody does it. It's cool. You look as if you're stuck in a 1990s time warp. Well, I will take that as a compliment, because let's not kid. In our generation, we had class and style, not like this generation that has no clue on how to dress. Alexa was enjoying laying into her daughter. It was usually the other way round, and her daughter would pick her apart, but now it was her turn to go for the jugular. Look at you, love. Sometimes I despair with the way you dress. Honestly, I really do. And what about all those piercings on your ears and in your nose and in your belly button? And the tattoos all over your arms? I mean, honestly, love, they're simply dreadful. There are no other words to describe them. I would hardly call them feminine. So you've decided to pick on my tattoos, have you, Mum? That's rich. I'll have you know they're very feminine. My generation likes tattoos. A lot of my friends have them. But then again, I wouldn't expect you to understand that. If you look at my arms, my tattoos are rarely pretty. They're covered in flowers and things like that. It looks like I'm wearing lace on my arms. It's prettier than having no decoration on your arms. My tattoos are rarely cool. Everybody says so. I designed them myself. Well, you think having stuff scribbled over your arms is attractive. It looks like you're wearing black pen marks all over yourself. I used to write on my arms, you know, if I wanted a boy's phone number, or to remember some of the answers to my tests. But at least I could wash all that stuff off. That stuff is stuck on you for good. And when you're old, it's not going to be very becoming, I hasten to tell you. You mark my words, you'll regret those tattoos one day. Everything is wrong with tattoos, love. Would I go putting bumper stickers all over a brand new Bentley? Absolutely not. I wouldn't dream of it. But you cover yourself up shamelessly with bumper stickers when you're wearing that permanent ink all over yourself. And what about that boyfriend of yours? He's no better, is he? I mean, honestly, love, where on earth did you find the likes of him? If you told me he came out of the dumpster with the potato peelings, I would absolutely believe you on that one. I don't think that young teenager has ever seen a barber a day in his life, and I'm not saying that to be unkind. All that messy, wild, untamed blonde hair, all over the place. And what about the clothes he wears? He looks like a punk rocker. You talk about me being unfashionable, but that look went out in the 80s. There's something very shifty about your boyfriend, Sophia. I hate to tell you this, love, but I just don't like him. Mum, my boyfriend actually has a name. It's Carpenter, unless you've forgotten. Carpenter. He dresses cool, Mum, and I love his wild hair. It makes him look like a surfer. Alexa let out an abrupt laugh. Is that what you call it, love? A surfer? No, you could fool me there. Do you know something? If I saw him crossing the street, walking towards me, do you know what I would do? I would cling to my purse very tightly. I'm just saying, love. Sophia frowned. At least I've been with Carpenter for over a year, and I'm only 16 years old. You're in your 40s, and you're lucky if you keep a man for just 2 weeks. Oh, is that how you're going to play it, Sophia? Very clever of you. For your information, I've had relationships that have lasted longer than a year. Have you forgotten I've been married for over 3 times? But at least I'm more discerning with my boyfriends than you are. Oh, really, Mum? You call yourself discerning? Well, what about the fact that you wrote to a guy who'd been in prison for violent crime for over 4 years? If I remember right, wasn't that the reason we moved to this apartment in a dreadful hurry? You were afraid of him coming out of prison and wanting to be with you. You were terrified the moment you learned he was coming out, because you thought he was there for life, didn't you? Not only that, but you were running scared, Mum. You got rid of your Facebook profiles and social media stuff. That was very different, love. It was only a bit of harmless flirtation on my part. I did it because he was in prison. I wasn't to know he was going to get out, was I? All right, I admit I enjoyed toying with him. But it was harmless. Well, so I thought. But out here in the big wide world, I would never foolishly date a man like that. Never. I've been around a lot longer than you, love, and I'm not trying to be unkind about Carpenter. But I don't like him. I think he's dodgy. He can't be trusted, love. Just so you know. You don't know anything about him, Mum. Nothing at all. What Alexa did not inform her daughter Sophia about was that everyone in the apartments knew that some parcels had gone missing from the janitor's office. Parcels that he'd taken in for the residents to pick up later on in the day. Someone with very sticky fingers had been pinching these parcels from him. Alexa would not be remotely surprised to find out it was her daughter's boyfriend, Carpenter. Ever since Carpenter had been hanging around the place, untoward things had happened. Someone was wantonly tossing McDonald's packages all over the place, so that the foyer smelt of potato chips and old cheeseburgers. Alexa was absolutely certain that Carpenter was the prime offender. The young man had absolutely no manners. Politeness was like a foreign language to him. People in this upmarket apartment block were naturally proud. No one would willingly toss out fast food wrappers and leave them to ferment in the foyer. Even the janitor had spoken privately to Alexa about the matter, asking her if she thought her daughter's new boyfriend had been responsible for tossing out the fast food packages. "Absolutely not," she had said to him, but deep down in her gut, she suspected that Carpenter was guilty. But she still had her daughter's back, even if she didn't agree with her choice in boyfriends. Alexia knew she hadn't been the greatest mother to Sophia. Even she would be big enough to admit that. She could have done a lot better, but she was far too preoccupied and self-absorbed to give Sophia her undivided attention. Not that Sophia had really minded that. In the circumstances, was it any surprise that Sophia was dating a less than savoury character? Probably not. To be fair to Alexa, she had raised Sophia single-handedly by herself for 16 long years, and that's not to be sneezed at. She hadn't told her daughter anything about her real father, but she began to worry about the future. If something untoward should ever happen to her, then who would take care of Sophia? She knew she needed to address the issue with her daughter. This would not be a comfortable conversation to have with her daughter, but it would be a conversation that needed to be addressed for sure. "What are you talking about?" said Sophia, rolling her eyes in exasperation. "I thought you said you were invincible, Mum." "Don't be sarcastic, love. There's no need for it, and it really does not suit you. What I'm trying to say, Sophia, is if I should die accidentally, maybe one day, for example, I get run over by a bus, or end up in a ditch somewhere with my throat slit. Now, I know the chances are very remote, but it can happen. And in the circumstances, I need to make absolutely certain that you are taken care of. That's all. Is that so hard to understand? You are my responsibility, love, and your future needs to be secured." "Mum, you know what your problem is? You watch far too many of those true crime movies. I knew that was a mistake. You know nothing bad is going to happen to you. Where is this coming from? You're the most positive person I know. When people complain about your sunbathing, you don't bat an eyelash. And now you're talking like this. It's scaring me. Is there something you're not telling me? Something bad?" "Of course not, love. I'm not hiding anything from you at all. I'm absolutely fine, love. I'm in perfect physical health. It's just called being savvy, that's all. Having an insurance policy never hurt anyone, and it's a very good idea, should the worst ever happen." "Is that what they call it? An insurance policy?" said Sophia sarcastically. "Now, you know, love, I don't earn a lot of money at Silverstone's." "You do earn quite a lot of money, Mum, but you just spend it all on your beauty procedures, on food and rent for us. There's not usually much left over afterwards, that's all." "That's my point, love. Now, if anything bad were to happen to me, I would want to know you were taken well care of. I'm your mother, and I certainly would not rest easily in my grave if I knew you were struggling financially. I would hate to even contemplate that for you." Sophia frowned. She was not used to her mother talking like this about many things. Her mother was the kind of woman that was going to live forever and ever, and Sophia had believed every word of it. Yes, her mother did do handstands on the patio railings every day, but she managed that very effectively, with no risk of falling whatsoever. Now she was talking about her demise, almost as if it was written in the stars for her. This was an unpleasant, unnaturally awful conversation to be having with her mother, that did not resonate very well with a 16-year-old teenager like herself. Death was a taboo subject that she had given no attention to. Granted, the slideshow at school about malignant melanoma and its intrinsic dangers had of course scared her half to death, giving her food for thought, but after that she hadn't considered the matter very much. Naturally, it had made Sophia worry to a degree that her mother's incessant sunbathing rituals might one day catch up with her, potentially turning her into a ticking time bomb. That one morning she might wake up to discover her mother had a nasty mole on her face, accompanied by a deadly diagnosis. The truth was that her mother was easygoing, fun-loving, relaxed and carefree. She was as untethered as a wild horse, and did what the hell she liked with her life, and she'd be damned what anybody else thought of her. She never took things too seriously. But the sober-guarded tone of her voice on this occasion had made Sophia's blood run cold. Her throat became dry and parched, rather like a riverbed. She even noticed that her heart began to thunder in her chest, like it did when she was running to the school bus, to avoid missing it. Why would her mother be talking about death like this? That was a dirty word that she'd rather never discuss if given the chance. But here her mother was talking about the subject as nonchalantly as if discussing the cereal they were eating for breakfast that morning. And this behaviour was so unlike her mother. Was there something going on with her mother that she did not know about? Had her mother's tanning sessions finally revealed, after all this time, some life-threatening prognosis? At her last visit to the dermatologist's office, perhaps? Or worse still, had her mother had some kind of premonition to be talking about this? You heard of these kind of things. Was her mother predicting her own early demise? Oh, please God, no. If not, why on earth were they engaging in this disquieting conversation together? It made no sense to her at all. She'd rather dig a big hole for herself in the ground and bury herself beneath it than hear her mother talking like this. She thought of what it would be like to be alone in the world, without her mother. It scared her half to death. She didn't want to envisage such discombobulating scenarios. She had lived with her mother all her life. Yes, her mother did have some quirky idiosyncrasies, but that was all part of her mother's charm. It was true. Her mother had become more like a friend to her than a mother, but she saw that as a distinct advantage. Granted, her mother had been through more men than some girls have had hot dinners. She was as vain, self-centred, and egotistical as you could get. But despite everything, and against all the odds, Sophia had thoroughly enjoyed a very good childhood. She had never wanted for anything. She had always known that Alexa loved her in her own funny, rather quirky way, even though she'd never been very good at showing it or expressing her feelings. She and her mother had shared some very good times together. Sophia adored her mother with all her heart, although these days, with her capriciously belligerent teenage outbursts, the love she directed towards her mother was in short supply. But was that any surprise? Every teenager's story is much the same. It really annoyed her that her mother had such an aversion to her boyfriend Carpenter. Her mother had made no secret about this fact, that this young man made her skin crawl. Of course she would say that, Sophia thought to herself. Alexa hated tattoos and piercings with a passion, and the punk rock way in which Carpenter dressed rarely irked her mother. Her mother found him unsavoury, but then she didn't know him, did she? Her mother was so very quick to judge a book by its cover. If her mother suddenly died, Sophia surmised she'd probably be forced to move in with Carpenter and his mother. But the thought of losing her mother didn't bear thinking about. She was surprised to discover that tears were developing in her eyes. "Why are you talking like this, Mum? Are you insane? You're not going to die. You're upsetting me." "Sweetheart, I have no intention of upsetting you, and for that I'm sorry," said Alexa, cradling her daughter lovingly in her arms and giving her a huge hug. She hadn't hugged Sophia in a long time, and was genuinely rather surprised that her teenager almost welcomed the embrace. She could be so prickly at times. Alexa looked lovingly into her daughter's eyes, wiping away her tears with a tissue. "Why on earth are you crying, love? It's unlike you to cry." "Because," blubbered Alexa, "I don't want you to die. Why are you talking like this? It's horrible, Mum. It's horrible. You're scaring me." Alexa cradled her daughter's face in her hands, lifting it up to her eyes. Their eyes met. "Listen to me, love. I am not going anywhere. Well, I have no intention of doing so. Nor do I have any intention of dying any time soon. So get that warped idea out of your head, will you?" Sophia nodded. "But if you're not going to die, why are we discussing this?" "Because it needs to be discussed, love. No one likes to talk about their death, especially their own, and I'm no exception to that rule. Look, this is a conversation I don't enjoy, and I've been putting off, but it needs to be discussed. If the worst ever came to the worst, you need to know what to do. Everyone who has children writes a will, don't they? It's a precautionary measure for them. I haven't got much to leave you, love, but I did take out a funeral policy to pay for those expenses, should the worst come to the worst, as that sort of thing can be very expensive. But I want you to do that very simply. I don't want any fuss should I die. There's a letter in the safe that I wrote to your father. I need you to give it to him in the advent of my death. In the letter I affirm that he is indeed your father, and that he has a biological obligation to take care of you, if I am no longer around. It was a letter I didn't want to write at all. It's in the safe. I've also got his address and phone number on a piece of paper there, so you can easily contact him, when the time is right, in such an eventuality, should that ever arise. But I know he will help you. He's a very good man. I know that much very well. My father? Asked Sophia, looking aghast. So you do know who he is? I thought you said you didn't know who my father was. I was being a bit economical with the truth, love. No harm in that. Of course I know who your father is. His name is Callum Barclay. He was the only man I was seeing at the time when I fell pregnant with you. So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind he is your biological father. Your father was a good man. I could easily have married him in a heartbeat if he had been unattached. I've done my research on him since. He lives in a beautiful house in the Georgian countryside, surrounded by woods, streams, and that kind of thing. Very lovely place to live, I hasten to say. Your father is reasonably well off. He's married to a woman called Margaret, who I gather everybody calls Maggie. And he has 2 children, a boy and girl, I believe. The girl's name is Julia. The boy's name is Spencer. Julia is the older of the 2. So I've got 2 siblings? Asked Sophia, looking dumbfounded. I can't believe it. I've got a sister and a brother. Yes, you have, love, half-siblings. Your father and his family know nothing about your existence currently, and I would very much like to keep it that way for the sake of his family. I had an affair with your father when he was going through a rather tumultuous time in his marriage. He was having a break from his wife that they both agreed to. He was considering a divorce, but then he realized how much he missed his wife, how much he loved her, so they got back together again. I was genuinely very thrilled for him. I might be many things, love, but I do not like to break up a good family. I knew it would be best not to tell you in the circumstances about your father. But if I die, it's a completely different matter altogether, is it not? Your biological father has a duty of responsibility to care for you, should I die. I would want him to take responsibility for you. He's a very good man of character. He won't dismiss his parental obligations. Sophia nodded. What could she say? She wanted this conversation over and done with. She didn't want to talk of her mother's death. It made the possibility of her mother dying all the more real. She was heartily relieved when her mother changed the subject and said, I tell you what, let's watch a movie together and order pizza, shall we? Yes, please, Mum. I'll have a margarita, she said enthusiastically. And after this conversation, Mum, it better be a comedy. A comedy it is, then. Later on in the evening, her mother had had a long, earnest chat with Sophia about her dreadful boyfriend, Carpenter, and Sophia began to feel things felt normal again in her household. Of course her mother was not going to die, although she wished to God her mother wouldn't do those handstands on the balcony railings or bathe in the sun so recklessly for hours on end. Those kind of behaviours definitely put her life at risk, but she thought better than to harp on about the subject. They'd said too much tonight already. It must have been about 3 weeks after Alexa's rather unfortunate conversation with Jane Goodlington about how she was putting her safety at risk with the handstand she was doing on the balcony railings, that Alexa found herself yet again on the patio. She was wearing her yoga leggings and crop top. She began to do her stretching. on her yoga mat, that she did every day as a matter of routine. She went through all the sequence poses, from the downward dog to the warrior. Once again she had the ominous feeling that she was being watched. She was sure Jane Goodlington's brother, whom she'd never physically seen, was probably ogling her again. But being an exhibitionist of note, she thoroughly enjoyed being fully appreciated by a man. It meant that even though she was now in her 40s, she was still successfully turning heads. But was that any surprise, really? Alexa knew she was in excellent shape. Everyone was telling her as much. People told her she had the body of a teenager, long and lean. Alexa decided she would do a few handstands on the balcony railing again. It gave her a thrill to do these exercises. It made her feel as free as a bird. But she knew she was perfectly safe doing these. Most people saw this as a daredevil stunt. But Alexa didn't consider herself brave. She did these manoeuvres because she knew they imposed no risk to her safety at all. But the moves always exhilarated her, as if for a brief moment she had experienced zero gravity. As she was pressing her arms up on the railing and lifting her legs above her head, she heard a thump, as if someone had landed on her patio with a thud. She saw the distinctive shape of a man. Before she could do anything, she felt a forceful push. She began to scream as she fell away from the balcony railings and went tumbling over past 9 stories to the courtyard below with a mighty thunderous crash. She did not hear a man's voice on her patio say, "Good riddance, you bitch. Now I've got my back on you." Sid the janitor was busy cleaning up some McDonald packagings that he found yet again lying across the courtyard. It was an unsightly problem that was getting way out of hand. It certainly wasn't his job to go picking up after other people like this. He felt grievously annoyed that this litter problem was getting out of control. He knew who was responsible. It was that seedy-looking teenager that had been hanging around rather unscrupulously with his goth-looking girlfriend. He knew the girl's name was Sophia. She lived in apartment 92 with her mother. Sid had spoken to the girl's mother, a woman called Alexa, about the problem, suggesting that Sophia's boyfriend was behind the thefts in his office of all the parcels that seemed to have gone missing, and was throwing out all his rubbish, so that Sid was forced to pick up after him. When he had mentioned all this to Alexa, the girl's mother, she had become quite defensive about the matter, refusing point-blank to admit that her daughter's boyfriend was the cause of so much discord. But Sid had detected a look in her eye that affirmed to him that she did believe her daughter's boyfriend was certainly not good news. Sid sighed as he picked up some of the litter to put into the dark bin liner, and that was when he saw the body hurtling towards him, crashing to the ground with a loud thud, missing him by mere inches. For a moment he couldn't see a thing, as he was blinded by the blood that sprayed into his eyes. And when he wiped away the droplets of blood from his eyes, he recognized the mangled deceased body lying spread out before him as belonging to Alexa Muldooney. Some of the residents complained that Alexa did handstands on her balcony railings. "Silly woman," he thought. "She must have lost her balance. But honestly, if you're going to perform acrobatics on your patio like a circus clown, you're asking for trouble, are you not? This was an accident waiting to happen. But if it was a murder, I would put money on it being the daughter's insidious-looking boyfriend. If he's involved in this in any way, he'd be responsible." Everyone naturally assumed Alexa's tragic death was all an accident, but Jane Goodlington's brother knew differently, of course. He rubbed his hands with glee, glancing down at the deceased body lying across the courtyard. "Not so pretty now, are you, Alexa?" he smirked, as he observed the whole scene before him, while the EMTs rushed around the place like a hive of busy carpenter ants. "This time Humpty Dumpty cannot be put together again," he said. So there we are. That's the end of part 2. Part 3 is tomorrow night. I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.